Emulators, a gateway to play games of past times. So simple too to set one up. Just download an emulator for the console of your choice and just download the ROM for the game you want, and there you go. You can now play video games on your PC. Doing this, I was able to play games that I missed out on my childhood. I could play Chrono Trigger, I could play Final Fantasy, I could play Earthbound, and so many other games that I missed out on too. You name it, there's a ROM out there. Personally, I like collecting games, but there is a fine line to games I limit myself due to pricing. I work, but I don't want to pay an exorbitant price for a game. That's too much of an investment for just one game, and gaming is already an expensive hobby to begin with. I can use that money to buy other games if I want to. Let me give you an example. Say you go to your favorite third-party seller, in this case eBay. I want to look for Valkyrie Profile since Sony doesn't have the game in their PS1 Classics. No, not that PS1 Classic. The service on PSN where you could essentially download a ROM from Sony's service, and voila, you now own a classic PS1 game. But like I said before, Sony didn't put all their PS1 games in this service. In this case, Valkyrie Profile on eBay alone is over $100. Hell, some of these sellers have the gall to sell the game in parts. Just the first disc alone is $30, while the game case with the instruction manual, but no disc, is another $30 or greater. First of all, what the fuck? Moreover, I'm an engineer and that has an arm and a leg to pay. Valkyrie Profile costs about a quarter of the student debt I pay every month, not including the other bills I pay. You can see where I'm going with this, right? To put it simply, game companies don't re-release their older games on their services, therefore making it harder for consumers to obtain copies of older games. Granted, Nintendo, Sony, hell even Microsoft are doing a better job in releasing their older games compared to 10 years ago, but there are still some missing games that they seem to neglect. Emulators of course fill in the gap for those missing games. Now I know downloading ROMs are a legal gray area because the whole emulation scene is still in the wild west. Nintendo's taking down major ROM sites for posting their games online, and I get what you mean Nintendo, it's your property, but you have to do your part in releasing those games. I'm willing to support any game that I like as long as it's legal for me to obtain. The goal of emulators is to preserve gaming, it's history that you don't want to be lost forever. There will be a time when your old cartridge or discs of generations past will not work anymore. Why not have a backup of those games just in case if anything happens? Look at my past review of SimCity for the NES. If it wasn't for a lucky store, we could have never gotten these games in the first place. For all we know, it could have been locked up in Nintendo's basement. Cause let's be real, if Nintendo did release some of those locked games, they will be making a huge profit. Look at the SNES Classic and Star Fox 2, an unreleased game due to it being developed at the end of the SNES lifecycle, which later got axed in favor of developing Star Fox 64. Relics of past generations are a big appeal to people. Why do you think people are still mad at Nintendo for not releasing Mother 3 out in the West? Rightfully so too. Changing gears a bit, I'm going to present a guide on how to help you determine if you should get the ROM of a game you really want to play. This is not foolproof because there can be exceptions in it, but I haven't encountered any situations like that yet. My first bullet point states, is the game available anywhere on modern consoles? For example, Banjo-Tooie is in the mid-range of prices to get in cartridge form. Luckily, Microsoft, who owns Rare, which is a whole story within itself, has put up the first two games in the Xbox Marketplace, not to mention in their Rare Replay collection, which is a fantastic bundle for the price of one. Second bullet point. Can the game be emulated at this current time? Reason why, because there are certain emulators of certain consoles that are shaky at best. For example, the PS3 emulator is kinda hit or miss with its massive library, so it's better to buy an actual PS3 console and just buy the games used digitally, which can support mom and pop shops and developers respectively. Reiterating what I said, if the game looked impossible to emulate, just buy the game when possible and at a reasonable price. Third bullet point is obvious. Is there an English patch available? More specifically, I'm talking about games that never left the land of the rising sun. Obviously these wouldn't be in English, so there wouldn't be a point to obtain a physical copy unless your Japanese is up to par. If not, please get yourself a ROM and an English patch. Learn how to use Lunar IPS or any other patching software, and voila! Your game is in full English. One perfect example of this case is Mother 3, which famously had an English patch released in 2008. I remember when that came out, everyone in the gaming community got their hands on the ROM and patched the ever-loving shit out of that game. Thanks to Clyde Tomato Mandolin for translating the game. Usually if there's a Japanese game out there, there's usually an English patch out there in order for you to translate the game itself. However, there's going to be some games out there that are not fully translated yet. Until recently, Shin Megami Tensei F got its English patch. I mean, and also if you're not patient enough, you could just, I don't know, learn Japanese. I mean, I don't know Japanese, but you get the point that I'm saying. Fourth bullet point. Is there a cheaper option readily available? Let me make another scenario just to make sense with what I'm trying to say. I'll use Valkyrie Profile since it's been released on the PS1 in short quantities, making it a very well thought out game. If you want to know how I can give the proverbial middle finger to the sellers gouging the prices? You buy the PSP version. Valkyrie Profile Linux, which is about a fifth of the price compared to the PS1 version on eBay. You get the same story with some added extra content, bonus points for being handheld too, so you can just take with you on the go to long car trips and flights. Personally, this saved me a lot of money, and not to mention saved me from buyer's remorse potentially. Not that I'm saying that Valkyrie Profile is a bad game in the first place. However, there is going to be someone out there bitching the fact that the remake or re-release is not the same. So those people are saying, let people have their fun. I'm especially saying this to the toxic part of the Yakuza fanbase, since some of them say that Kiwami 1 and 2 are inferior versions to the original. Finally, the 5th bullet point considers the developers. Does getting the ROM hurt the developers financially? This one is pretty simple, and here's my case. If a game is currently out of the market and hard to attain, by all means, you have the right to download the ROMs of said game. After all, it can't hurt the company since they are not currently selling the game in digital form. In my opinion, companies should offer a way to let gamers play the older games without having to download the ROMs, as I stated in the beginning. I've stated all my reasoning for each of these bullets. Now you're able to make the judgment call for yourself. I'm a big supporter of emulation, however I do support companies protecting their IPs. It's just some of these companies don't know what to do with their IPs half of the time, and it causes a big gap not only finding an alternative, but giving accessibility to the younger generation of gamers. I have a cousin who is 13 years old. He is a huge gamer, and I showed him my favorite game of all time, Silent Hill. Yes, a bit of a mature game, but I assure you I was the one playing it. The game was readily available in the PSN store on PS3, which makes it easy for me to show it off to him. That accessibility helps introduce gamers to a series they never heard of. That is the beauty of game preservation in and of itself. Now this is where I pass on the question to you guys. Do you support emulation? Also, do you also have a set of guidelines whether to download a ROM or not? If so, let me know down in the comments, because this helps promote the discussion and it helps in the end results of this video. But this is all the time I got for today. See you guys in the next video. Jug signing out.